Black Hawk Down, The Truth Behind the Fog, audiobook by Naveed Ali Sheikh, based on real events. In the smoke and shadows of Mogadishu, we were the ghosts who refused to let the fallen stay fallen. The forgotten rescue, the ghost of Kargil speaks. I remember Mogadishu like it was yesterday, the burning sky, the crack of gunfire from every rooftop, and the desperate calls over the radio. They tell the story now in books and movies. They call it Black Hawk Down. But they don't tell you everything. They don't tell you about us, the Pakistani soldiers who rolled into hell so that the Americans could live to tell their story. We were stationed under the United Nations flag, not expecting glory, nor seeking any medals. But when the call came, when the American Rangers and Delta Force operators were trapped, fellow soldiers shot down in city streets, we knew what had to be done. There was no hesitation. Our convoy Pakistani tanks and armored personnel carriers side by side fought its way through the gauntlet of death. The militia came at us from every side. RPGs firing from alleyways, snipers from windows, ambushes around every corner. We took casualties, we lost vehicles, but we pushed through, not because we were ordered to, but because those men trapped inside Mogadishu needed brothers in arms, not politics. When we finally reached the Americans, what we found shocked us. Bloodied, exhausted, dragging their wounded, barely holding the line. And there was no way we could drive our APCs directly to every trapped man. They would have to run. That's what they call the Mogadishu Mile today. The desperate sprint through streets of fire and bullets. But they don't say who shielded that mile. It was us, Pakistani soldiers, dismounting under fire, forming human walls with our bodies, returning fire, clearing snipers, pulling the wounded behind our armor. Every step they ran, we were there, laying down the lead that kept them alive. I saw a young American fall, shot clean through the thigh. Before the militia could finish him, I ran towards him, grabbed him and hauled him behind our APC. No one talks about that in their movies. The Americans were brave, they are fierce fighters, but so were we. Without our tanks, without our covering fire, without the blood we spilled that night, there would have been not a single survivor to tell the tale. Yet when the dust settled and Hollywood came to write their version of history, we were written out. They painted the story as American endurance and victory alone. What about our role? Reduced to a footnote? Forgotten? Erased? We didn't come for glory. We came because soldiers don't leave soldiers behind, whether they wear green, tan or black. Years later, when the mountains of Kargil echoed with gunfire and they called me the ghost, I fought with the same creed I carried in Mogadishu. Brotherhood before borders, duty before glory. The truth about Mogadishu will never change, no matter how much they rewrite it. On that dark night in the streets of Somalia, Pakistani soldiers fought, bled and saved life, and we will carry that silent honor long after the last storyteller forgets. In the smoke and shadows of Mogadishu, we were the ghost who refused to let the fallen stay fallen. Signing off, the ghost of Kargil. Hi, this is Naveed Ali Sheikh, the writer and author of The Ghost of Kargil, members from Tolaling, Ghazi, Killing Hikmat, and of course the Black Hawk Down. You will now hear the true story of the Black Hawk Down, in which Pakistani soldiers went in to rescue Delta and Rangers trapped in Mogadishu. You can buy the 2-hour 45 minutes complete audiobook narrating the whole scenario on sarias.com or Audible, KDP or any audiobooks network.
The Unsung Heroes, the Ghosts of Mogadishu. How the Pakistan Army helped save US, Rangers and Delta operators in Mogadishu. In the dusty streets of Mogadishu on October 3–4, 1993, one of the most intense urban firefights involving US forces since the Vietnam War unfolded. Immortalized in the book Black Hawk Down and its film adaptation, the Battle of Mogadishu is widely known for the valor and tragedy that surrounded the US Army Rangers and Delta Force. Yet, what remains largely forgotten or overlooked in Western narratives is the crucial role played by the Pakistan Army, a role that helped save American lives and contributed decisively to the extraction of pinned-down US troops. Recently, an audiobook by author and founder of famous platform Sarius, Naveed Ali Sheikh, focused on the role of Pakistani soldiers involved in the rescue mission. At the time, Pakistan was part of the United Nations Operation in Somalia 2, UNOSOM-2, a multinational peacekeeping mission aimed at stabilizing the war-torn country. Pakistani troops were among the first to arrive in Somalia and were already conducting operations long before the infamous battle. When Task Force Ranger's operation to capture Somali warlord Mohammed Farah Aidid's lieutenants spiraled into chaos, with 2 US Black Hawk helicopters downed and soldiers trapped in hostile territory, it became clear that a broader rescue effort was necessary. As the battle intensified and American troops faced near overwhelming resistance, it was a Pakistani armored column, supported by elements of the 10th Mountain Division, that mounted the rescue mission. Pakistani tanks and armored personnel carriers, under UN command, spearheaded the movement through the city's hostile neighborhoods, enduring heavy fire and dangerous roadblocks to reach the beleaguered American positions. The rescue force, which included Pakistani M48 tanks and Malaysian Condor APCs, succeeded in breaking through to the trapped soldiers, extracting the wounded, and recovering the bodies of the fallen. The final breakout would have been impossible without the Pakistani armor absorbing enemy fire and clearing the path. Their disciplined coordination and bravery under fire made a life-or-death difference for the US personnel trapped inside the city. The audiobook of Naveed Ali Sheikh tells the tale from a Pakistani soldier who was later recognized as the Ghost of Kargil by the Indian forces. It is said the Ghost, still operational, conducts several special operations, but this claim could not be verified. Despite this pivotal role, the Pakistan Army never saw public recognition or accolades for its actions. No speeches were made, and no political points were scored. This humble professionalism reflects a long-standing ethos in the Pakistani military: do the job, save lives, and let history speak for itself. While the Hollywood version of events gave limited acknowledgement to the contributions of Pakistani and other international forces, those who were there know the truth. US military personnel who were rescued have, over the years, expressed gratitude toward the Pakistani.
History is often written in haste, sometimes by those farthest from the battlefield. In Black Hawk Down, The Truth Behind the Fog, author and analyst Naveed Ali Sheikh tears through the silence and selective memory to reveal a shocking, meticulously researched truth. October 3rd, 1993, Mogadishu, a city trembling under chaos. A mission meant to be swift becomes a desperate descent into bloodshed. American elite units, Delta Force and Army Rangers launched into a hostile city to capture warlord lieutenants. But within moments, the streets become a battlefield. 2 Black Hawk helicopters shot down, soldiers stranded. The mission, now survival. As the American troops were overwhelmed, surrounded, running out of time, another force moved, uncelebrated, unrecognized, unflinching. The Pakistani Quick Reaction Force, under the UN flag, stormed through hostile streets, taking fire, taking risk, saving lives. When the narrative of glory gave way to silence, they were left behind in the fog of history. This is not a tale of rivalry. It's a chronicle of sacrifice, of brotherhood, of the unsung courage of those who answered the call and asked for nothing in return. For the first time, the truth behind the fog lifts the veil, and the world will finally see all its heroes, the Pakistani Armed Forces. The world watched as chaos unfolded. 2 Black Hawks down, American forces trapped, defeat imminent, death and misery circling like vultures. But in the smoke and silence, unsung heroes rose, a rescue no one expected from the allies no one ever acknowledged. When the fog of war finally lifted, it wasn't just American courage and resolve that stood tall. It was actually Pakistan Armed Forces standing in the way of death, with their arm lowered to pick up the fallen. The ghosts of Mogadishu, steel clad, unwavering and unshaken. Because sometimes the greatest battles are won by those history choose to forget. Black Hawk Down, The Truth Behind the Fog, the Ghost of Mogadishu audiobook by Naveed Ali Sheikh will dip you in what really happened. Available to purchase at sarias.com, Spotify and Audible. The civil war in Somalia had been going on for a long time when Ziad Barre as you call him, was overthrown by the rebels, and then the Somali rebels formed the United Front, which had two major components in it. One of them was Farah al-Adid militia and the other was Ali Mahdi militia. Both of them fought against Ziad Barre in Mogadishu. In 1990s, the United Nations peacekeeping force had to intervene because of the fight between the rebels. Many innocent lives were lost, and also the agricultural land was destroyed intentionally. Somalia is not a big country with gigantic resources. It is called the Horn of Africa. It is similar to the horn of rhinoceros. If you look at the map, it looks like a rhino horn. This is why Somalia is called the Horn of Africa. Basically, this is the port that comes down from the Bab al-Mandeb in Yemen. This is the same place where you see the Somali pirates hijacking the ships. They hijack the ships and sometimes take the captives in the mainland of Somalia. These two major players, Ali Mahdi and Farah al-Adid, were brokered by the United Nations, and a green line was created in Mogadishu. One side was controlled by Ali Mahdi and the other side was controlled by Farah al-Adid. Strength-wise, like as in Malaysia, Farah al-Adid was way stronger than Ali Mahdi. But Ali Mahdi was more strong politically because when the interim government sworn in, Farah al-Adid boycotted that session, and all the Arab countries, including the US support, they selected Ali Mahdi as the president in absence of Farah al-Adid. So this made all the players support Ali al-Mahdi more than Farah al-Adid. But on ground, as in fighters, Farah al-Adid had a more loyal militia. Ali al-Mahdi had support of many intelligence officers from different countries, the countries which supported him, the countries which recognized him as the president of Somalia. United Nations, United States of America, all were in good contact with Ali al-Mahdi, and they wanted him to work with Farah al-Adid to reach a peace agreement. But the fighting went on and thousands of innocent people kept dying on daily basis. United States of America tried its best to contain the situation and reach an agreement among both players, but they would not settle for less. Farah al-Adid wanted to be the president as he thought that he is the stronger candidate for that, while Ali Mahdi, now sworn in as the president, never wanted to leave. So this was the friction between both of them, and they were killing innocent Somalis like anything. December 4th, 1992, after a year long of civil war and deaths and carnage, President of United States of America, George W. Bush, announced sending 28,000 US troops to Somalia to contain the situation for the common man there. When the Somali rebels got this news, they were quick to align themselves with each other. Both Farah al-Adid and Ali Mahdi met and decided that they are going to fight the US troops together. Yesterday, friends, today's enemies Tomorrow's friends again and then enemies again. This is Somalia, my friend. All this time, Farah al-Adid and Ali Mahdi were in contact with each other also, fighting each other some places, tipping off US about each other, being together on some occasions and being against in others. So United States of America here was the third party now, which was dealing with both Ali Mahdi and Farah al-Adid simultaneously. United States of America was also involved in humanitarian efforts of distributing food programs to the common Somalian people because the agricultural land was totally destroyed. There was no crops. People could not eat and there was a recognized, announced famine. Well, this was something good for the people, but it was not taken as good by the warlords. They wanted to control the food program because they knew who controls the food control the people. Both parties would raid each other's food convoys, storages, warehouses, any places, distribution centers. It was a big mess. Both parties did not want to upset US as they were taking funds from them and they knew that United States is their only hope to get recognition and control of Somalia as the president. So they were not trying to upset US, but both were doing double game with the donors. Farah al-Adid, as he had no post at that time due to his boycott, was doing these things more. He wanted United States of America to realize that he is a major player and US cannot go through the peace deal by just supporting Ali Mahdi. It has to be divided. Farah wanted Ali to be out of Mogadishu, but Ali was not ready to leave control of the capital. This clan and tribe-based civil war fighting and one of the worst African droughts of the century created famine conditions that threatened 1/4 of Somalia's population with starvation. In August 1992, United Nations began a peacekeeping mission to the country to ensure the distribution of food and medical aid, but it was largely unsuccessful. With UN troops unable to control Somalia's factions and security was deteriorating, and thousands of tons of food stranded in port-side warehouses. President Bush ordered a large military force, as I told you, 28,000 on December 4th. 5 days later, the first UN Marines landed in the first phase of Operation Restore Hope. These early Marines came from Djibouti and Eritrea. They were already present there on different missions. Remember, this was 1992 December, and an year back in August in 1991, President Bush and United States of America just ended the year-long unpopular Gulf War. And as a result, the Democrat candidate Bill Clinton had already won the election on 3rd of November 1992. So when President Bush was announcing this 28,000 troops, he already knew that he had to leave the office and Bill Clinton will be the one taking in charge. But these are state policies, so they had to continue the same way. That is how and why he announced the troops on 4th December 1992. The Somalian rebels took it as an opportunity. They knew that the president who has announced the troops and who sent the troops there was not the president who's going to take charge in January. And any losses they conduct to the US teams there will be a big pressure on the newly elected Democrat president who came with the slogan of change and peace. So as per their calculation, this was their time to attack the US troops in Somalia. This was the time to create pressure on them so they exit. And actually, to be honest with you, after 15 months, the same thing happened. Bill Clinton came in with an anti-war slogans because he utilized all his efforts and all his campaign being an anti-war, anti-Gulf War slogans. So he was not here to order new troops in new wars. But as I told you, the state policies have to continue. So he remained quiet. He said okay to the troops which were already present there, and they started constructing their bases there. With the aid of US military troops and forces from other nations, the United Nations succeeded in distributing desperately needed food to many starving Somalis. However, with factional fighting still continuing and the United Nations without an effective agenda to resolve the political strife, there seemed no clear end in sight to Operation Restore Hope when President Bill Clinton took office in January 1993. Bill Clinton, for the next 6 months, was involved in a lot of peace deals across the Middle East and Africa. Locally, he promised the nation that he will bring the troops home. He wanted himself to be seen as a peacekeeper, a negotiator, a person who wants to end all wars and bring the Americans back to their families. In my opinion, it was just an image he wanted to create because he had a lot of lobbies pressurizing him to continue these wars as they benefit from these wars. In Middle East, the Gulf War I has ended, but Saddam Hussein was still in power. The Americans constrained their war in just liberating the Kuwait. They did not go further in disposing Saddam Hussein from power. Saddam Hussein also went quiet and underground. He did not mess with the Arab nations and actually accepted the defeat in order to be left in power and fight another day. So all the Arab nations, they were afraid and they wanted American help to be there, present with them side by side in case Saddam Hussein again choose to attack them. And you later know that the Gulf War II did actually happen. We will just take ourselves in the domain of Somalia. In Somalia, things were different. It was a civil war going on between two factions and a famine across Somalia for the common Somali people. So this was a different kind of mission. Still, Bill Clinton was very clear on this. He did not want the war to continue and he did want to pull the American troops back even from Somalia stage-wise. So he was lobbying and pressurizing the United Nations to pledge more troops, bring in more troops from other countries so Americans can pull back and they can take over. To the good luck of Somalis and Americans, Pakistan Armed Forces were also enlisted to join the peacekeeping missions in Somalia. And this is how I, as a young Pakistani officer, reached Mogadishu in UN peacekeeping mission. The war has created almost 1 million refugees and almost 5 million people threatened by hunger and disease. The United Nations Security Council in January 1992 imposed an arms embargo against complete Somalia. The Secretary General organized talks between all parties who agreed on a ceasefire and to be monitored by UN observers, and on the protection of humanitarian convoys by UN security personnel. In April, the Council established a United Nations operation in Somalia, UNISOM 1. But the fighting continued and the relief effort was badly hampered. The Security Council in August mid decided to deploy some 3,000 additional troops to protect the humanitarian aid. But the situation went worse and aid workers were coming under constant attack from both clans, and 1.5 million people were now threatened by famine. It was around November 1992 that United States offered to organize and lead an operation to ensure the delivery of food assistance. United Nations accepted the offer and authorized the use of all necessary means. This included the military operation to establish and secure environment for relief effort. The unified task force from almost 24 countries led by the United States quickly secured all major relief centers, and by year's end, the food aid was again flowing. UNISOM remained responsible for protecting the delivery of assistance and for political efforts to end the war. In simple and easy words, it was UNISOM who was negotiating with the parties, with the rebel parties. One major party was the declared President Ali Mahdi Malaysia, and the other party was General Farah al-Adid. So UNISOM was between them negotiating a peace deal, distributing food in their specific regions within Mogadishu, and also inspecting their weapon sites. As a meeting convened by the Secretary General in early 1993, this is the time when Bill Clinton has taken over in the United States, 14 Somali political movements agreed on a ceasefire because the US troops had landed already, which I told you in the previous chapter, and pledged to hand over all weapons to UNISOM. In March, the United Nations organized an aid conference in which donors pledged over $130 million. This is, I'm talking about 1993. The amount was large. At a reconciliation conference organized by United Nations and their special representative for Somalia, the leaders of 15 political movements endorsed an accord on disarmament and reconstruction and the formation of a transitional government. This was a big success of General Farah al-Adid, as he has convinced the United Nations that he is also a stronger party. Ali Mahdi was not happy because he was already the interim president. He wanted United Nations to confirm his status. Farah al-Adid was having a more loyal militia, and his street power was way more than Ali Mahdi. After the talks were successful, the Security Council in March decided on the transition from UNITAF to a new United Nations peacekeeping operation, UNISOM 2, authorizing it to use force if necessary to ensure its mandate, securing a stable environment for the delivery of especially the food assistance. UNISOM was also mandated to assist the reconstruction of economic, social and political life there. But while UNITAF had patrolled less than half of the country with 37,000 well-equipped troops, the 22,000 United Nations peacekeepers were given the mandate to cover all Somalia. Too much troubles, too much fighting, too less a force. The factions, however, did not observe the ceasefire, and we reached June 1993. But before I tell you what happened on 5th June 1993, I will take you to Farah al-Adid, and the part which I will narrate now in this audiobook will be from the eyes of Farah al-Adid. What was going on in his mind and what was he actually doing? Listen, we had been together in removing Barry from power. We lost men. I lost my closed one. In the struggle, when the reconciliation was happening, I was told that I should boycott it. And I did, but Mahdi betrayed. I'm not sure who was behind this, Saudis, Americans or the Russians, but I was betrayed. It was always my chance to seize power, not his. But we need to play the devil the way devil plays with us. We need weapons. Mahdi is self-centered, while I'm fighting this war for my clan, for all of you. We need to hold up, press the Americans. They already have issues back home. Don't worry about Bush order. I have good contacts. The new one will not risk being in trouble, and that is why they are negotiating with us. Our objective should be to take control of Mogadishu and fortify it. I need every man, woman and kid to come forward and fight. Every house should have weapons. Every house should serve like a base. The Americans respect who holds more power, who holds more of the city. We must keep our attacks on. Attack the convoys, raid the food supplies, and destroy the Mahdi militia as much as you can. I have good contacts in UN. I'm not just sure about the Americans now. They are supporting Ali openly. They want Ali to take over all zones. We must stop that. One of our big hurdle is the Pakistani force sitting on our head in the stadium. I met their commanders in the peace deals. It's better you avoid them. Their mandate is not to fight you unless or until any of your men screws the plan. Be careful, and we need to maintain some sense of courtesy. I will speak up to the Americans too. They are betting on the wrong person. You don't need to worry about that. You don't need to worry what I'm doing and whom I'm meeting. You just keep pressurizing the parties as I told you. We have multiple frontal war going on. We need to keep everyone close. We can't decide who is our friend or foe. For me, all of them are my enemies, except you guys. I trust none but you. But we need to play with caution. You getting me? I've been told when the new president takes over in January, there's gonna be a different team to negotiate with us. I don't know whether they will be better than this one or not. Things between the Americans and the United Nations force is not running smooth. You know that. They both want larger piece of share. Although the Americans are more inclined to Ali, but the United Nations is keeping us in the loop. We need to mend our things with the Americans because the money is going to come through them. UN cannot decide on this. I hope I am able to convince them. I don't want trouble with them. But one thing is clear, we need to convince them, either by hook or by crook. Let's avoid as much as we can. I heard that the Americans are pushing for a change in United Nations staff over here, especially those who are helping us. If that happens, it's gonna be an open war with them. But I pray we don't reach that point and things are sorted out smoothly. Ali Mahdi was also from Hawaiya clan. He was a strong candidate and had been off and on the first pick for coalition partners. When the first recon meeting happened in Djibouti, Ali was pre-picked and Farah was informed about the reasons. Farah, on knowing the reasons, boycotted the conference and Ali was declared interim president. Almost everyone present in the meeting agreed to it. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Americans, Italians, even the remaining warlords. Everyone agreed on the presidency of Ali Mahdi, except Farah Ladid. The issue was that Ali's main fighters were from the north, Somaliland, and Italian. Those fighters were brought into Mogadishu and a green line was formed in order to protect and support Ali Mahdi with different mercenaries fighting along his side. These people were ex-army men from different countries that supported Ali Mahdi. So you can say that Ali had a great counsel guiding him on the day-to-day war and good commandos to protect him. But this was more like a defensive mandate, not aggressive like Farah al-Adid. Farah al-Adid had fighters from Mogadishu. They were long entrenched there. They knew the terrain. They knew the streets. While Ali Mahdi Malaysia was more concerned in protecting the president. They were more into protecting their territory. They were not into getting into Mogadishu on the other side and taking over the territory of Farah al-Adid. However, as I told you, Farah al-Adid has more loyal local baseline with him and they were more closer to the port, so they were more aggressive and attacking more on each of their opponents. This was the only one plus point for Farah, but Ali had many plus points and some of them were beyond the reach of Farah al-Adid. Ali had the legitimacy to fight this war. Ali had the funds to fight this war. And when you have a famine in your country, you have poverty in your country, anyone will sell the loyalties for some dollars. And this is how Ali was controlling the parts in Mogadishu. He had money to buy anyone. This made his intelligence network within Farah al-Adid's ranks way much lethal. So Ali was the best pick for any United Nations wanted to do, US wanted to do. They knew that the info from the ground can easily come through Ali al-Mahdi. And at many times, this info was 100% correct. The presence of Farah al-Adid in this story was just to balance the equation and keep a check on Ali Mahdi. Because among the other 15, these two were still way more closer to United Nations and United States. Somalian civil war is a great example of patience and a battle of chess where everyone is with everyone and everyone is against everyone. You don't trust each other, but there is no choice. You have to. Farah al-Adid knew this very well, that he won't be able to survive without the help of United Nations and slightly of the United States also. While Ali Mahdi knew that his safety only lies in being on the side of United Nations. Well. Both of them did not know that there is a new player also. Farah al-Adid was using the Muslim sentiments across the Muslim world, telling everyone that he's fighting a kind of a crusade and Ali Mahdi is being supported by the crusaders, referring to the support by Italy and Europeans and also United States of America. The same drama repeatedly done in history. Farah al-Adid was more keen in negotiating with United States, United Nations, Italy, or let's say the Vatican City itself, but to rally local support from his clan and other Muslim countries. He was saying that he is fighting against them. Absolutely rubbish and false. It was merely a fight for resources, money, and to take power. That's it. In simple. Why I'm telling you? Because the same script was also exported out of Somalia into Pakistan too. And when the Pakistan army enlisted for the peacekeeping force in Somalia, there were local people over here who were saying that Pakistan should not go to Somalia and fight Farah al-Adid. Pakistan army was there on a peacekeeping mission to stop Farah al-Adid, Ali Mahdi and 15 others killing the innocent, starving Somalians. Let me now take you to an event that changed this status quo. Okay, so the quick timeline from here is that in November, George W. Bush Sr. lost the elections of President of United States from Democrat candidate Bill Clinton. The state machinery was not ready to abandon this war at this stage, while the president came into power with a promise of peace and bringing back the troops home. In December, quickly UNITAF was given a task to increase the mandate of humanitarian aid across Somalia. Operation Restore Hope was first and foremost a military operation with humanitarian objectives. Limited attention was given to the long-term political and security needs. The operation was initially welcomed by many Somalis, but with such a substantial force, local expectation of the intervention were more than the mere security routes for relief supplies. Its failure to do any more than this left many Somalis feeling bitter that their restored hopes have been betrayed. Meanwhile, back in Washington, there was a lot of changes planned in the foreign policy and foreign offices. Many people were transferred back and many new people were going in to take important positions. In March 1993, a conference on aid assistance followed by a conference on national reconciliation and a plan for UNITAF to hand over to a broader civilian and military operation, UNISOM II, in May provided an opportunity for the UN operation in Somalia to change its emphasis. The Addis Ababa conference in March brought in a lot of donors. The UN received pledges of $142 million. Among the major donors were European Commission with $43 million, USA with $30 million, and Germany with $20 million. There was a lot of money to be funneled in through the warlords, and this made them very, very greedy. The Addis Ababa meeting came under criticism. The main concern was that the signatories at the conference were to be 15 political leaders, the warlords, who in the eyes of many Somalis were criminals responsible for much of the suffering in Somalia. UNITAF, out of a need to protect its own forces, had sought the cooperation of warlords, thus conferring on them a measure of legitimacy. Their participation in Addis Ababa meeting would legitimize them further. Totally unacceptable by a common Somali who has suffered from each one or either one of them one way or another. Ismail Abdi Abdurrahman Douala, Muhammad Noor, Ali Mahdi, Umar Haj and Farah Al-Adid. He made sure that he is available this time. A transitional mechanism for the restoration of political and administrative structures. In particular, it agreed upon the formation of TNC, Transitional National Council, with legislative functions, central administrative departments to re-establish the civil administration, regional councils in 18 regions of the country, and district councils in all districts of the country. What were we doing? Giving everything to the bandits. We're just standing by the wall with a checklist in our hand that which one is lesser evil. While the Addis Ababa conference provided a framework for national reconciliation, insufficient time was allotted to determine clear mechanism for implementing the agreements. Many were hopeful, but many knew that this is going nowhere. Peace was a distant dream. Rather, many knew that the fighting will increase and all warlords will push themselves to the limit to capture more gains and more control. Advisors in UNISOM had different opinions. Many thought that Adid was the right person and performed well, and proved to be the only person with leadership potential. It is further alleged that this version of events was rejected by others, especially by United States advisors in UNISOM, who had decided there was no future role for Farah Al-Adid. Here we also have reports of some of the operatives in CIA who were pushing for Adid. So there was a mere confusion. The only thing certain was that there is a big disaster coming in near future. In May and 1993, there was a conflict brewing and there was confusion during the handover from UNITAF to UNOSOM and a change in mandate of the UN in Somalia. There was lack of clarity in the mechanism for implementing the Addis Ababa agreement. No one knew what to do. The UN Security Council approved Resolution 814 and expanded the role of United Nations in Somalia. They would be called UNOSOM II. By this resolution, the Security Council approved the expansion of multilateral force to 28,000 peacekeepers with 8,000 logistic personnel. Peacekeeping changed to peace enforcement. One person was not happy and was actually furious on these changes, and that was Farah Al-Adid. He was openly challenging the mandate of United Nations and that of United States also. He was using Radio Mogadishu for his speeches, and he was trying to rally support from within Somalia and outside Somalia, rating it as a war against colonials and crusaders. I mean, what? This guy was begging for money and funds and everything in return of his loyalty to the same colonials and crusaders. We had to stop this. Farah Al-Adid was informed formally that Radio Mogadishu site, which was one of the protected sites for the weapons, and under the agreement deemed for inspection, will be inspected on 5th of June. We will be coming, my friend, and we want you to be prepared because we are going to check if there is any prohibited weapon available there. I mean, he was told in advance to be prepared. Less was known what he prepared for. A contingent of UNISOM troops entered Radio Mogadishu at 12 noon on 5th June 1993 on what, according to some reports, was a staged operation and according to UNISOM was a routine weapon search to confiscate arms which are not allowed. And as I told you, Adid was notified beforehand for the weapon search. Some say that the radio station, the Pakistani peacekeepers met resistance from Adid fighters. In the fight, 24 Pakistani soldiers from Baloch regiment were martyred and an unknown numbers of Somalis were killed. The Pakistani soldiers fought the militia for 5 hours, reportedly, and local says that UNISOM helicopters and vehicles passed by but did nothing to assist them. This is the Somali version. One of the most disturbing aspects of the killing of the soldiers and a factor that has reinforced hardline opinion against Adid was the fact that many of the Pakistanis martyred were badly mutilated. It is alleged that women were responsible for the mutilation. The Somalis considered this inspection as an attack and say that this was staged, while UNISOM said that it was a routine inspection. The blame game was continuing. One thing was clear, that Farah al-Adid was feeling death in his spine. He was not knowing that the soldiers present there were Pakistanis. He came on the radio again and had a speech saying that we need to cool things out. We were not knowing it's all done merely out of confusion. Many don't know what happened that day, but I do know because I was present in that convoy. I lost my dear friend Captain Ubaid in an ambush when we were returning from the radio site. I lost my senior Major Ahmed in Radio Mogadishu. This will be avenged, my friend. This will be avenged. It took us 48 hours to know who was the person who facilitated this attack, who was the person sitting on the machine gun when it was fired towards our convoy, and who was the master planner, Farah al-Adid. Yusuf Muallim, one of the main men of Farah al-Adid, was responsible for this attack, and he was prepared for us inside Radio Mogadishu and on the streets to ambush when we leave. The battle went on for more than 9 hours. We kept fighting, but our ammunition was exhausted and there was no reinforcement. The UNISOM helicopters kept hovering around across the city, but the gunship was not used. We were left on our own to fight and die, but we kept fighting and killing. The Somalis reported 350 casualties and we lost 24 of our men, 18 at the site of Radio Mogadishu and 6 while fighting and coming back to the stadium. While the matter was convened in an emergency session of United Nations Security Council, we were told to restrain and keep our cool. The UN clearly nominated Farah al-Adid and an action against him was recommended by everyone except United States, who thought that the evidence against him is not that concrete. But after the intervention of Ali Mahdi with the US, Farah al-Adid was considered a criminal, a murderer, a fugitive by United Nations. We were ready to hunt this son of from wherever he will hide and drag him out with Yusuf Dari, but the United States took the task to its QRF and started hunting Farah al-Adid. The 5th June Radio Mogadishu tragedy was pre-planned by the Somalian militia. Some say Pakistani contingent was sent in as a bait. Some say the weapon inspection was more related to destroying Farah's capacity for transmitting propaganda to Somalis. Many thought Ali Mahdi was playing a double game with Farah and the US. Some reported the US knew about the planned ambush but did not inform the Pakistanis and United Nations. Different people had different opinions. Farah al-Ladid was feeling the heat. He first said it was other leaders from his so-called coalition who planned this and he was unaware of this. Then when confronted with evidence, blamed his local commanders like Yusuf for taking the ambush decision on their own without consulting with him. He knew he was in trouble. He did not know why he walked into this trap. Who actually pulled him in? And then the martyrs were from Pakistani force. He knew well they will take revenge. They can do it anytime, as Pakistani Stadium was near and any patrol mission by them can easily be converted into an attack mission. He remained underground for few days and thought of moving out of Mogadishu. However, he knew it was far harder to do than to just think. Farah was in a mess. He was negotiating with the Pakistanis through middlemen and also pushing his international sympathizers, especially those in Pakistan, to reverse pressure the Pakistani government and army through protest. I mean, what? I fail to understand such people who, rather for calling for a revenge, were protesting that revenge should not be taken. Bravo, my friends, you and your loyalties can go in the dustbin. It doesn't matter. We had to take revenge, and we did. We obtained the list from our informants, about 33 main people who were responsible for the killings and were prepared to take them on, and also their facilitators. While the UN resolutions were going on and condemning the attack, this list was kept with us only, and we were rounding up the location of those people. Many people already flee out of Mogadishu, but some of their main men had to stay there to keep their forces intact. Things were getting heated up between United Nations and United States on why the gunships did not respond and help. The US said there were no distress calls from the Pakistanis for assistance and help. Honestly, they were correct in this. We were fighting and we made no calls. Pakistani army will never wait for reinforcement, and every soldier will take the task in his own hands. We broke through the barricades and returned back to Pakistani Stadium with having zero help from any coalition partner. Mind it, my friends, for those who don't know, wherever Pakistani force will be present, there will be present intelligence and protection unit. We knew very well about the whereabouts of each one of them who was involved in this killing. We could have taken them out silently. We could have taken them out openly. But we were pushing United Nations to pass the resolution and give a legal cover so we can take the revenge of the uniform that was Pakistan Army and also United Nations. Another thing discussed in the meetings was how Somalian warlords were using child soldiers and specially equipped, well-trained women in front of their lines, women capable of shooting down helicopters, women capable of smashing your all platoon with machine guns. And this is what they were doing. An urgent intelligence and evidence-based report was forwarded to United Nations on who is the combatant and who is the non-combatant. In a war zone, anyone who shoots and kills a soldier unprovoked and asked only to identify himself is a combatant. He will receive the same bullet before he fires. There were no non-combatants around Farah al-Adid. All were combatants. Whether it was the 5th June attack or the Black Hawk Down on 3rd October. South has experienced a spiraling of violent conflict between UNOSOM and Adid, with both parties accusing each other of heinous acts. The UN offered a reward for information leading to capture of Adid, and Adid in response offered a reward for the capture of on what he termed Animal Hue, the SRSG Admiral Hue. The situation in Mogadishu has turned into an urban war of attrition between United Nations and one faction in Somalia, the Farah al-Adid faction. In effect, the civil war in Somalia has turned into an international conflict. Adid supporters kept attacking UNOSOM targets on daily basis. On 8th of August, 4 US Marines were killed by a hand-operated mine in Mogadishu, and on 22nd August, a further 6 US peacekeepers attached with the United Nations were severely wounded by a landmine by Adid forces. Well, finally the decision was made, and on 12th June 1993, around 10 am, 6 Cobra helicopters and 4 Kaiwas launched 16 missiles, 2200 rounds of 20 mm caliber cannon fire in just 8 minutes on the compound. Christopher Robin, the chief warrant officer, says, "Our orders were to destroy the conference room on the 2nd floor where everybody was supposed to be meeting. Then we were to destroy the staircase in the back of the house so no one could get away. I was flying security for battle position 1 and my job was to wax anybody if they tried to leave the compound, or if they came outside or tried to shoot at us. Then I was supposed to destroy the front gate of the compound so that the infantry can get in." What Farah saw and heard was a flash of light and a violent crack. He stood and took one step forward and heard the second missile hit the wall. There was another flash and explosion. He was thrown to the floor. Thick smoke filled the room. He tried to move forward, but his way was blocked by bodies, a bloody pile of men, parts of men a meter high. Those who survived the first blast were feeling along the wall, grouping to the door when the second missile had hit and exploded. The air was thick with dark smoke and smelled of powder, blood, and burnt flesh. Farah found the stairs stood and had taken one step down when the third missile exploded, disintegrating the staircase. He tumbled to the floor. He sat up stunned and felt himself for broken bones and wet spots. There was another explosion above him, then another, then another. Those who escaped the initial attack had to jump from the second story of the building onto the ground. Collateral damage occurred when one of the missiles and the stray firing struck near the French embassy. Also among those killed were civilians who were not directly participating in the conference, such as multiple women who had been serving tea for the gathering, children who had happened to be playing in the villa's courtyard, and nearby pedestrians who had been hit by stray 20 mm rounds. Nothing of them remained. After just 8 minutes of the attack, the ground offensive began, and Pakistani forces moved into the compound, looking and searching for the targets. At that time, the compound was having around 200 to 250 people inside. Many of them were dead with the airstrikes, but many of them had survived. Remember, these were tribal leaders meeting there, and each tribal leader was having his own personal guards, at least 100 each. So there was a lot of people inside the compound, and there were a lot of people in the surrounding. We found a few familiar faces from 5th June, and they received a pistol headshot. But the main people which we were looking were not there. Farah al-Adid was not there in this meeting, and Yusuf was also not there in this meeting. Even Ali Mahdi was not present in this meeting. So what was this meeting for, and who were these people? Maybe these were the people who were the opponents of Farah al-Adid and Ali Mahdi. Probably at last minute Farah has sent some of his men, whom we recognized and killed, but not the main one of them. Why? Who tipped off Farah al-Adid? And why was this meeting taking place adjacent to the French embassy, the same embassy the Black Hawks landed? Of course, as there was some people in the US establishment who were supporting Farah al-Adid, or you can say who were feeding the monster to keep the balance between both warlords. To me, 12th June was an opportunity to take revenge from few of the men. However, it looked like a plan to make Farah al-Adid more stronger, as most of his rivals were killed in the airstrikes. Honestly speaking, I have no regrets for this, because each one of them, each of the warlord, each of the tribal leader involved in Somalian civil war was a butcher, a murderer. There were no clean hands there. Everyone's hands were filled with blood. The only difference was that this day, it was their own blood. Well, you might be thinking that you heard something few minutes back in this audiobook. Do you remember that? Okay, let me make it easier for you. Here, I was referring to this part. Farah found the stairs stood and had taken one step down when the third missile exploded, disintegrating the staircase. He tumbled to the floor. Well, this is not what I said. This is what was said. But actually, Farah al-Adid was not present in this meeting. If he would not live a single second more. So as per me, I would say the mission which we had to take revenge of our soldiers was still incomplete. And well, for those who died, as I told you, there were no saints. They were murderers. They were criminals. They were bandits. One day soon or one day later, they would have met the same fate. It was good for the Somalian people. But the issue was quite transparent in front of everyone. Even the UN commanders were having a tough time with US, telling them that they need to stop this, they need to control this. If their policy has changed, it should change. It should not be that half men have decided not to listen to the policy and half men are trying to enforce it. This is dangerous for everyone, not just them. But I don't know whether the base plan was to keep balance between both Mahdi and Adid, keeping both of them in the loop. We lost 24 of our men and we were cautious. Even the other contingents in the United Nations force, which was having like 28,000 people, the French, the Germans, the British, everyone was concerned about this behavior. It was putting everyone on the risk. The United Nations details in the Blue Book claims that it took 9 minutes for the troops to clear the area, search the villa and depart, all while leaving earlier than expected, marking the Abdi House raid as the fastest operation that had been conducted by UNOSOM 2. The total time of the raid from the first TOW hitting the villa to the last soldier exiting was about 17 minutes, according to UN spokesman Lieutenant Colonel David Haynes. Well, in response to the attack, multiple foreign journalists traveled to the site to gather information. Several went with SNA escorts who had insisted that the journalists see the carnage unhindered. Adid, who has miraculously survived this attack, was saying that he was inside the villa. Everyone got killed, but he survived miraculously. Good show, Farah al-Adid. In a very unfortunate event, 5 of the journalists were enveloped by the crowd and they got separated from the other journalists. And of the 5 journalists, 4 were shot, stabbed to death. Because of these killings, most Western news organizations completely withdrew from Somalia, which greatly contributed to the lack of any substantial press during the Battle of Mogadishu on 3rd 4th October. The international reaction was divided. Italy supported the Somalian claim and said that this raid was unnecessary and killing a lot of tribal leaders would fuel the civil war more. You must remember that Italy has ruled over Somalia for half a century. The Social Democrats in Germany pushed against the Chancellor's offer to send more troops to Somalia. The British Prime Minister criticized the United Nations, claiming that the emphasis on military operation was costing innocent lives and fueling hatred for the West. Bill Clinton's very close congressman from Ohio, Sherrod Brown, introduced Resolution 227, urging the withdrawal of American forces from Somalia as soon as possible. The Pakistani and French governments strongly backed the raid, and Pakistan's foreign ministry argued that without a proper military operation against all these warlords, the country would plunge into civil wars for decades to come. Well, all those who disagreed with this would only be alive to see more murders and more genocide by the Somalian civil war that has not ended ever since. Anyways, for us, we had to follow the mandate we were serving. What I mean to tell you here is that there were a lot of divisions. So you can say that Somali warlords were successful in their strategy. Both main warlords, Ali Mahdi and Farah al-Adid, started coming together as they knew that they will be rounded up if this operation continues. In the weeks following 12th July, part of the city turned into a near anarchy as UNISOM positions all over Mogadishu were directly assaulted on daily basis, forcing many foreign troops to withdraw from UN compounds. The only one within the city left was the Pakistani Armed Forces in Pakistan Stadium to protect the Green Line. We were also told and threatened by many to relocate. But for what? Why should we relocate? If all these warlords are worth their salt, they should come and challenge us. We are sitting right between them. Join your forces and come. This was our open message. They never did. Rather, they started attacking the Americans and French in different convoys. There were daily attacks by these supporters on UNISOM targets. But as I told you, these UNISOM targets were selected carefully. It seemed that Adid was finding US targets because he knew that if US is hit, they will have more pressure back in Washington because already the Clinton administration was thinking of bringing the troops back home. If United States withdrew from this, there would be a lot of pressure on United Nations to follow the footsteps. On 8th of August 1993, 4 US Marines were killed by a hand-operated mine in Mogadishu, and on 22nd August, a further 6 US peacekeepers were wounded by a landmine. These tactics were unacceptable by any standards, created heightened tension among the UNISOM troops who traveled the roads. There was some evidence to suggest that Adid was using children and women in the war against UNISOM. In August, an armored personnel carrier was stopped by a crowd of children standing in front of it. They climbed on board and robbed one of the soldiers. UNISOM troops no longer carry out any foot patrols and travel only in convoys. The majority of UNISOM military and civilian staff moved around Mogadishu by helicopters. While all this was happening and the created tension, it was Pakistani troops under UNISOM who were still patrolling on foot, who were still distributing food among the Somalis. We were the only one carrying all these patrols and sitting at arm's distance from both Ali Mahdi and Farah al-Adid militia. After early August attacks, the US deployed further 400 elite rangers and a contingent of Special Delta Force with the aim of capturing Adid. The aim was to create enough stability to enable the USA to withdraw its 4,000 troops with dignity. Despite the vastly superior weaponry available to United Nations and the presence of 13,000 troops just inside Mogadishu, the UN did not appear to be winning the war. The failure of US elite troops, the Rangers, and the Special Delta Forces to capture Adid has left UN looking embarrassed. On 30th August, the UN was further embarrassed when the Delta Force launched a nighttime raid on UNDP headquarters in Mogadishu in the belief that it was an Adid command and control center. What was happening? This mistrust was creating terrible situation. In end of August, Farah al-Adid received an offer to go in exile, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Yemen, wherever he chose. But he turned these down, suspecting in them a sign of United Nations weakness. He felt his position was strong and was prepared to remain in hiding within Mogadishu. On 4th September, Farah al-Adid was ready to sign a deal with UNISOM to include a ceasefire and the formal opening of a dialogue. But then a day later, 7 Nigerian peacekeepers were killed. Since then, it is not clear whether any further negotiations have taken place, and the violence in Mogadishu intensified. Many blame Ali Mahdi of jeopardizing the deal because he was sensing that Farah al-Adid is taking the edge over in front of the Somali people and also in a stronger position to negotiate with the US and the United Nations. It was on 1st October 1993, 300 hours, that we got an information that the Americans are preparing an attack. To our surprise, the information was coming from the sources within close circle of Farah al-Adid. By 2nd October evening, the news was coming through sources from Ali Mahdi. What was happening? If the Americans were preparing for an attack, why everyone is knowing it? Hundreds of Somalians were coming into Mogadishu by 2nd October night, and to our estimate there were around 13 to 14,000 militiamen within the 7 kilometers of city center. Both Ali Mahdi and Farah al-Adid militia were putting roadblocks on their sides of the green line. I remember the last patrol we made on 3rd morning around 500 hours. When we were going towards the city from the green line, we could see militiamen entrenching into buildings and roofs. It was normal to cross roads with armed men, but the quantity that day was way more bigger than the normal. We had full information that both Ali Mahdi and Farah al-Adid are not in the city. I did not understand at that point that what was all this fuss for. Anyways, my platoon did their work. We did distribute food at the designated site at 8 a.m. When we reached back to our Pakistan Stadium base at 9:15, we were told that something important is going to happen today and we have to remain on standby. Sounds perfect. We were happy that we will find another chance to complete our list, but sad at the same time, knowing that Farah al-Adid was not in the city, but some notables were there, and Yusuf Muallim was among them. I did not know how much long I will have to wait to get my hands on his neck. We had around 3 battalions serving under the United Nations mission. It was from Baloch 10, 19 Lancers and 15 Frontier Force. And there was my special unit attached with the Frontier Force. Pakistan Stadium was actually the athletic stadium, the only athletic stadium in Mogadishu. It was not far, it was around few kilometers from the city center. We were totally a separate attachment. All other United Nations force, which counted at that time more than you can say 9 to 10,000 troops within Mogadishu, they were living in the UN base, which was very near to the airport, far from the city center. This one large compound of United Nations was hosting the Indian force, the French, the German, the Italian, the Canadian, the American, of course, and all of them, they had their own specific individual bases within this large compound. The American base was in the middle of all those bases. You can say that around 900 to 1000 Americans were posted there. Similarly, the other battalions of Germany, France, India also had their own forces and equipment. They were away from the hot zone. Pakistani force was in Pakistan Stadium, which was actually in the heart of Mogadishu. We had built a military hospital there to treat civilians. It was like being in the conflict zone. This was just few kilometers from the Green Line. All the work on ground was done by Pakistani army, like treating the civilians, treating the injured, distributing the food, patrolling. This was all done by Pakistan army. The Somali warlords were unable to conduct a single attack on United Nations base because it was very far from the city, and then there was an airport, there were air defense, there was a lot of protection over there. So all their attacks were subject to the party who will be patrolling on the roads, and that party was Pakistani army. We were on the edge of the Green Line, and on both sides there were both militias. Our forces were in the middle. We used to patrol both of the areas. We used to go there every day to do different things. Basically, the food program in 1992, you can say it continued within 1993. Food, blankets, and the aid that came from United Nations, we were supposed to distribute this to the civilians. You can check on any pictures you find in the record. The distribution was done by Pakistani force and none else. This was actually the most difficult task to do there because both militias and other bandit groups, they wanted to attack and they wanted to capture the supplies for themselves. Then you have the civilians, very hard to control. Everyone wanted a large share. Everyone wanted a double thing. Everyone wanted to take as much as he can for himself and his family. You had to control them. You had to contain them. Also, sometimes they used to attack us. Many times we used to face armed robbers. To be very honest with you, they were no friends. They all wanted to kill you and take whatever you have. Understandable. We did not take anything personal. We knew that there was a famine and people were starving to death. It was their survival instinct which was making them behave like this. But at the same time, we must make sure that the aid is distributed equally to everyone and not only the strong hand. I think I mentioned before the reason for this famine was that due to the civil war, a lot of agricultural land was damaged. You must have seen the pictures of Somali famine. Just like that, the people were undernourished. They were actually only a structure of bones. It was a terrible situation. Very disheartening to see human beings in such a condition. God be our witness, we tried our best. The Somalians were very happy to have us there. But there were people who also hated us for doing these things. And these were the warlords. They wanted to control the food, they wanted to control the aid, so they can control the people of fear and survival. See, I didn't had any problem in that. But if you will attack my convoy, you will attack my soldiers, you will attack my friends and kill them, I'm going to come for you. Just stay away from my work. Just stay away from my duties. Stay away from my friends. And I'm not gonna come to your place and kill you. The American used to call them skinnies. When the aid came, we used to distribute it. And we used to make sure that the civilians get the most of the benefit. Apart from this work, we had another work given by the United Nations. That was to inspect the weapon sites. So in this, We had to deal and interact with the warlords. Of course, the weapon sites were not with the civilians, but the warlords. We had to make sure that the Somalian warlords were not keeping any chemical weapons or large weapons which can damage civilians. Both Farah al-Adid and Ali Mahdi, when they negotiated with the United Nations, they signed a peace treaty on these contracts. Because of that, our inspection teams used to go out there and check their weapon storages. Well, the terms were pretty convenient for the warlords. Every time we had to go there for inspection, we had to tell them in advance. Well, what can we do? That was the agreed mandate, so we had to follow that. Many times we used to club things together. If we are going for an inspection at that site, after the inspection completed, we used to set up a camp there and distributed food. It went on like this, but we used to face problem. At that time, we did not face any major problem, but like the small issues were that when we finished distributing the food and went from the site, the warlord used to attack the civilians and capture their food because they knew that food was the main power, and I think they were correct in that. This hyena type behavior was the reason of skirmishes and fights among them. Well, honestly, the world was very generous. We had a lot of supplies and especially of food. But the thing was that these warlords used to attack the civilians, take their supplies, and then take them in their warehouses, storing them for a longer period. This reason was creating the shortage, and the mandate was peacekeeping and not peace enforcement. We could do nothing. The only thing we could do was to come back tomorrow again and distribute more food. And this is what we did. And prayed to the Lord that this reaches the starving mouth. Many times when we were done with the food distribution in the morning and patrolling in the evening, we used to encounter people asking for food, and we used to give them our own tiffins. You have no idea what misery these bastard warlords have brought to Somalia. And then when you meet them, they will act like a savior of the people, like we were unaware of what they were doing. Shameless people plunged the beautiful Somalia into a certain death, and if you are unlucky to live more, you will be facing indefinite misery, hunger and suffering. Many would choose to die today than to live another day. This is what these warlords have done to Somalia. The Somali rebels used to have RPGs, machine guns, and at that time Farah al-Adid in specific, because of his history with the Soviet Union, his militia was having Kalashnikov, which was very popular assault weapon at that time. They used to ambush us and we used to respond, but we were not supposed to go behind them. So we used to stop, respond, kill some of them, move forward, and this used to happen like every day. In my personal opinion, the problems began to increase when America had a regime change and there were new elections. The previous establishment was very proactive and wanted to sort this thing out with an iron fist and a military solution. You are talking with the warlords, you are not talking with political people. These are warlords who are representing themselves as political people. Each one of them was having thousands of armed militia. How come they were political people? The Americans wanted to keep the equation balanced. Some were supporting Farah al-Adid and meeting them, and some were on the other side supporting Ali Mahdi. As I said, to keep the equation balanced, so the intent was not bad. But as for both looking up to Americans and receiving funds and aids from them and support from them, instead of reducing the conflict, it increased it. The Italians were doing a pretty similar thing because Somalia had been a colony for them for like half a century. This was creating friction between the Americans and the Italians, and the unity of UNISOM was pretty jeopardized. I don't know about others, but Pakistani army took this matter to the Americans and Italians and told them, hey, listen, if we proceed like this, it's gonna screw us all. I don't know what was the issue, some personal egos, some personality clashes, liking, disliking. This all was giving the Somalian warlords a lot of space to breathe and flourish their command and control. This was in June 1993. The Americans took the front seat in the United Nations to negotiate with the Somali warlords, and as I told you, the friction created among the rebels was increasing. They all wanted to be close to the Americans. Both Farah al-Adid and Ali Mahdi were playing a double game with the Americans. If you study the Battle of Mogadishu or Operation Gothic Serpent, you can easily recognize that there were a lot of flaws in the plan. Well, everyone in United Nations and Mogadishu was knowing about the American plan, but the Americans kept thinking that no one knows. As per our reports, the plan was crafted and then matured by special operatives of American establishment working closely with Farah al-Adid. Some said the plan was leaked by Ali Mahdi to Farah al-Adid, but whatsoever happened, everyone was knowing that the Americans are going to attack a marketplace on 3rd of October. There was a big fight between the French and Italian troops with Americans when at the later stage of the operation they were requiring help. So both of these parties, including the Indians being present there, they said to Americans that you never told us. Why you did not tell us about this operation? And now you are asking us for going inside Mogadishu and retrieving the troops. This is impossible for us. We will not walk into death. Some German soldiers later admitted that they went into the American base when they were gathering the weapons for the operation, and they also said best of luck to few of their friends who were about to leave for the operation. See, there was no one important available there who was arrested. If there was someone who was of prime importance, we should know who he was. The plan had trap, trap, trap written all over it. Whether it was Farah al-Adid, who was not even present that day in Mogadishu, or Ali Mahdi, who deemed to tip off the Americans about the presence of these two lieutenants in Olympic Hotel. Who were these two guys? I mean, the most important person was Farah al-Adid himself, or Yusuf Dari, or many others. Who were these two people for whom the Americans have mobilized such an important unit? To understand this, you need to understand the pressure which was coming in from Washington and the pressure which was coming in from the Somalian warlords killing American soldiers, plus the pressure from Italian troops heading the uniform. I swear, if that day we did not go in to rescue the Rangers, none of them would have survived. The Somalians were prepared. As I told you, early in the morning they made the barricades, they took their positions, they took the positions on the exit routes, they were everywhere. It was impossible for the Americans to get out from there if we would have not attacked them from the other side. And another thing I must mention here, that the Rangers and Delta fought courageously, bravely, but they were greatly outnumbered. We were able to reach them several hours later. It was them who was fighting with thousands of Somalis to the last bullet, to the last grenade. They were holed up in very difficult positions, open positions, and the Somalis were attacking them openly from everywhere. It was a grave mistake of the Americans to trust Farah al-Adid that he will reconcile. United Nations put a head money of $25,000 on Farah al-Adid, and it was easier to increase that, and the money was a hefty amount at that time. But the division between the American establishment is fully responsible for what happened with the Rangers and the Delta. I mean, what's wrong with you guys? One guy is preparing to attack, one guy is preparing for the arrest of two tipped off lieutenants of Farah al-Adid, and the other guy is telling Farah al-Adid that the attack will happen at this time. Come on. And you tell me this is geopolitics and international relations? Well, the son you trusted was now all head-ups to kill your own soldiers. If you guys don't trust me, you guys can easily see where was Farah al-Adid's son and wife. Where was Hussein Farah al-Adid? It is very surprising for anyone who doesn't know the detail that Hussein Adid was a US Marine. He was raised up to a US Marine. What was happening, mister? These were the same rogue elements who did not inform Pakistani troops properly, and we had 24 martyrs that day. And now the same elements were sending hundreds of top supreme Delta and Rangers inside a war zone where 13,000 people were prepared for them to come with a lame reason of arresting 2 lieutenants. I mean, why did you want to arrest these invisible, nameless lieutenants? Just bring the gunship on top of their heads and send them to hell. In his early tenure, Bill Clinton was very active in peace deals. Bill made peace between PLO, Yasser Arafat faction and Israel. And Yasser Arafat went to the level of recognizing Israel's state officially. Can you believe that? Bill Clinton also brought the peace treaty to Jordan and Israel. And Jordan and Israel still till date are following the same peace treaty. But the current establishment was not ready to implement it in Somalia. Bill was busy. Bill was more focused on bigger optics. Bill did not want to get involved in these small issues. And with American dying and people protesting at home just like they had been protesting against George Bush, Bill was reluctant to jeopardize his whole peace image for just a bunch of Somalis. It looks rude, but what do you think about how does this look? The people who are providing you food and shelter and other medical assistance, you keep killing them? Is this a sweet gesture to you? There was one lobby telling Bill that we should just forget about these skinnies and get ourselves out. And there were others who were telling that no, if we get out right now, it's gonna be an embarrassing situation in front of United Nations who are opposing us and many other countries whom you are negotiating and settling things. They will not respect you. One was like that, let's shed off this Farah al-Adid. Get him out of the way and let's continue with the interim president Ali al-Mahdi. The other was like that, are you crazy man? If we put everything on Ali al-Mahdi, that means we will be stuck in Somalia for decades because Ali Mahdi himself is not capable to do anything. From up to down, left to right, right to left, there was confusion and lack of decision. The Somali warlords knew that and they were playing with it. I mean, I was a pretty junior officer at that time, but if they would have asked me, I would have given them a very simple solution. There were around 600 to 700 leaders of both of these militias who were running the show. The other people were like simple starved soldiers who had joined their ranks just for rice, wheat and milk. Take care of these top people and the matter is solved. Maybe they might have thought about this idea, but they knew that because of the presence of United Nations and different forces and the friction between them and UN, the discussion will leak out. It was really a mess up. It can be discussed very casually like we are doing it, but when you are running the state affairs and you are the alone superpower in the world, you can't risk your image. So I guess the maturity was that to make a small plan, soft targets, execute it, and then say that, okay, what we had to do, we have done and we are withdrawing. So I guess the plan was to go into Olympic Hotel, get some people arrested, unknown people, and bring them back and say that we have apprehended those who were responsible for the killing of American soldiers and now we want peace and we want to withdraw. To make it more secure, just talk to those guys and tell them that we're gonna do this thing, just bring some of the men out there, don't tell them what the operation is, we're gonna come, we're gonna capture, make it look like real, we're gonna take them back, and that's it. You're gonna get your share in the government, share in the aid, and your son will join our forces. Don't worry about that, we are friends. What about the soldiers? What about the commanders? What about the Rangers and Delta? Do you want to take them in confidence? Of course not, man. Just let them go in a normal operation. We have already spoken to the people. They will fire some bullets and we can fire many bullets. Don't involve the boys in these kinds of politics. Let them go in free hand and let them do whatever they want to do. There won't be any resistance. Things can be sorted out in 10 to 15 minutes. What about the coalition partners, UNISOM? Should we inform them? Well, why do you want to inform them? Just for them to take credit? Just leave them aside. This is our matter. We will solve it ourselves. Okay. These were many things which would have happened that day in the planning of Operation Gothic Serpent. For better understanding, now I will take you to the Somalian side. What was happening there? Let me tell you something you might not be knowing. It was 1979 Said Barri appointed Farah al-Adid as a minister in his cabinet. But due to Farah's high ambition and interference, Said sent Farah to India as an ambassador there. It was 1979 when Farah al-Adid moved his family to United States of America as a refugee, and due to Farah's link with the Americans, yes, ladies and gentlemen, Farah al-Adid's son was not just a notarized US citizen, but also a US Marine. Hussein Farah was the link between Farah al-Adid and the Americans, and he even came back to Somalia as a translator to the commander at the end of 1992, then left shortly in January 1993. After he left back, Farah al-Adid started his attacks on UNISOM. Many grey areas here. So Hussein was the link between Farah al-Adid and Americans. Hussein provided Adid info and also conveyed messages to Adid from the Americans. Adid was not sure if this interaction would secure him the presidency, so he kept a dual face with Americans. He wanted to pressurize them, also wanted to give them relief. The command shift from UNITAF to UNISOM was a heated up issue. Adid kept using it for his own gains. Let's move towards the final battle, but first let me tell you about the routes, Americans and ours. The American incoming routes are almost exact, but the evacuation of Rangers and Delta routes are either not mentioned properly or unfortunately absolutely wrong. I will take you in 1993 October and explain you the maps. Keep three main locations in focus: the Pakistani Stadium, Bukhara Market / Olympic Hotel, and the Black Hawk crash sites. Minor locations are University Compound, UN main base near airport, and the rally point. You can refer to them in the map given below. Let me start with the Pakistani Stadium. Well, if you write Mogadishu Stadium on any map application today, Athletic Stadium opens. You might think that this was the Pakistani Stadium, right? No, wrong. Move closer and you will find an abandoned smaller stadium. This abandoned stadium as of today was actually the Pakistani Stadium. This was used by Pakistan Army and we had a field hospital there to treat injured and had 10th Mountain Brigade vehicles and tanks present there. That equipment was under our use for daily patrols, weapon inspection and food distribution. Pakistani Stadium was around 2 to 3 kilometers from Bukhara Market. However, Somalis blocked major roads entering the crash site on 3rd October and we had a bit longer than expected route that day. With residential areas on all sides, this market was used to trade goods. Any goods. You can get United Nations US weapons, drugs, Gath, a major commodity at that time, a slave market, anything you require were traded in Bukhara Market. The residential area was used as warehouses and underground tunnels. Women were armed, children were armed. It was one house on the street for Ali Mahdi Malaysia and the other house on the street for Farah al-Adid Malaysia. It was like both parties sitting eyeball to eyeball. Here they would not fight. As the turf was divided, the trade was divided also. Bukhara Market was the overground and underground market of Mogadishu. Many rebel groups from all over Africa used to send their representatives here to purchase illegal commodities and also all the Somali warlords were having their business present here. Usman Ali Utto, Farah Ladid, Ali Mahdi and many others, everyone was having their shops here. Olympic Hotel was the main prestigious accommodation available here. It was the high-end hotel beside the Bukhara market. Traders from all over Africa and Europe used to come over here, stay in this hotel. And on 3rd October, Adid had this hotel fully converted into a military base. Their command was not to fire at incoming Rangers, but things escalated when the local commanders took some decisions on their own. On 3rd October, 2 Black Hawks were shot down from 2 different locations, both by RPGs, and they crash landed at 2 different locations within 3 to 4 kilometers from the Olympic Hotel, referred as Crash Site 1 and Crash Site 2. Both markings are almost 99% exact. Now the university compound. This compound was 3 kilometers away from the main Pakistan stadium. The ghost unit was present here and we used to commute from here to the stadium. There were other lodgings too in uni compound, but when things heated up after Balochistan attack, it was vacated as referred as extremely dangerous location. We still were the only one remaining there and we stayed there till the end. Now the UN main base. Okay. This was near the airport and properly guarded by air defense. In October, it hosted around 10 to 12,000 UNITAF UNISOM troops. Americans around 1,100, 2,000 Germans, around 1,800 to 2,000 French, Italians, many other countries coming under the United Nations, even 1 brigade of the Indians. They were all present there. This was around 6 to 7 kilometers from the Olympic Hotel. Last but not least, the rally point. This was the point from where the American ground troops turned into towards the Olympic Hotel. This was present on the green line and designated as the rally point. When later American rescue teams were stopped here by Somali rebels who have barricaded the area, we asked the rescue mission of Americans to stop there and went in the area from the northern side. Below you can refer to 3 maps. One map is the incoming American route. The second map is where the rescue mission came and stopped. The third map is our incoming from the Pakistani stadium and our exit towards the Pakistani stadium. So let me make it easier for you. The Americans came into Bukhara market by air on Black Hawks and other helicopters, and then they lowered down on Olympic Hotel. While the ground troops were coming through this route, which I just told you, the rally point, from the rally point, we came in from the northern side. We rescued the American and we sent them on the same route. We came in from the northern side, but we exited from the rally point because this was the point the other Americans were standing and they were being attacked also. So we came in from a different route and exited on the different route. I will explain you in detail the routes when I discuss with you the battle day in the next chapter. Anyways, what happened in this was that the American had planned this because there was a lot of pressure coming from the White House and the special forces were already there to conduct this operation. Many people say that the Olympic Hotel actually belonged to Ali Mahdi. The American knew this or not, we can't say anything in that. Some say Farah Ladid planned this with the rogue elements within CIA who wanted the American troops to stay and promised Farah that with their support he will be able to become the undisputed president of Somalia. We don't know if this was true or just assumptions. Yes, it was clear that the new administration wanted to withdraw the troops, while some wanted to show how dangerous it would be for the world community if Americans were withdrawn. Well, both school of thoughts make sense, but unfortunately, they had little impact on what happened on 3rd of October. The visible plan, what can be seen, was that Rangers will go in and arrest a few people and then the operation will be announced as successful. But what they did not know was that this was known to everyone, even the KGB. Almost all people present in the UN compound were knowing this plan. We were knowing this plan being in Pakistan Stadium. Farah al-Adid was knowing this. Ali Mahdi was knowing this. However, none was knowing the outcome of that day. For the Americans, the outcome was simple. Go in, get those men, get out, open and shut. It will be wrong to say that the Americans were not prepared. What else preparation you expect from them to capture two men? They took their full force, Black Hawks and other helicopters, and from below they took the convoy, empty vehicles for arrest. It's actually misfortune that struck them the moment they left the UN base. The moment the last heli's wheel lifted from the base, Somalis knew that the Americans were coming. The Americans have left for their Operation Gothic Serpent and they are coming towards us. Let's get the weapons and positions ready. Yes, but this is true. The Americans were way outnumbered. They were around 10 to 11,000 Somali combatants with weapons, grenades and rocket launchers, holed up in 8 streets, almost 40 plus buildings, floor by floor. There were men on the streets barricading for an ambush. Remember, the barricades were not to stop the Americans enter. They were for them to get stuck inside. Most of the blockages were made after the Black Hawks went down. They were to trap the Americans in and not let the rescue teams come in. Farah al-Adid was ready to take the American down and give them heavy casualties. This was maybe his form of showing grievance or pressure on Americans to do more or something else. It doesn't matter. The Rangers were about to get into deep trouble and they were not prepared for handling siege situations, at least not expecting them today. When the Americans left the United Nations base, after a few minutes, they reached Olympic Hotel. Farah al-Adid Malaysia has already taken cover besides the Olympic Hotel and also the adjacent streets. All the buildings within this street and across the street were captured by Farah al-Adid Malaysia. As I told you, floor by floor. Most of the buildings were like 2 stories, but some were 3 stories tall. So the Black Hawks have to lower down in order to rope the soldiers down on ground. 60 to 70 feet was a safe, stable height for the Black Hawks to lower down the troops. The rebels standing on the roof of those buildings or those who were holed up on the 3rd floor would be actually eye-to-eye contact with the pilot. The Americans were pretty wrong here. Farah al-Adid Malaysia just a week back had attempted to shoot down a Black Hawk. How come they were not expecting this? If you analyze and research on the Operation Gothic Serpent, you will see betrayal written all over it. Most of you will be questioning me by now that why I was saying in the previous chapters 2 important lieutenants, Rangers and Delta were tasked to capture did not exist, right? Well, they did exist. Tiger Abdi from the 3rd July Abdi House attack and Hassan Salad, the FM I guess, of the shadow government of Farah al-Adid. Well, wait, first you must understand Farah al-Adid had no government. The interim president was Ali Mahdi. Farah's delusions might have forced him to consider his men foreign and interior ministers. Tiger was very close to CIA, and if you remember, I did raise my concerns in the previous chapters regarding Tiger being involved in the Abdi House plan. I don't need to get into this. On the other hand, Salad was as close to Adid as Adid was close to Syed Barri. They were all contenders of becoming the president, and actually many did in later stages. Tiger Abdi and Salad were not present on the streets of Mog, and the so-called high-profile meeting was never happening in Olympic Hotel. It was just a setup. Was Tiger arrested? Was Tiger brought back to the UN base at the end of the operation? You must find these answers to understand the gameplay. Let's move to more important things. I have explained you above details in the previous chapters. Well, I will repeat to you again here. Tiger Abdi and Hassan Salad, the 2 important lieutenants of Farah al-Adid, as per the reports, they were both not present in Bukhara market. They were both not present in Olympic Hotel, and by the way, they were both not present in Mog that day. Now we are getting closer to the timeline of Operation Gothic Serpent, the Battle of Mogadishu. I will actually tell you the timeline in 3 parts. The first part of the timeline is as per the Americans. I mean, I was not present there in the United Nations base or the control room of the Americans, or you can say the complete day of 3rd October. So here I will use my research which I have done on the account of different people, and you can say that 95% of that research matches what the Americans have told. From the moment the Americans got in touch with us, that was around 11:30 p.m. third night, and requested us to rescue the Delta and Rangers trapped inside Bukhara market. While I'll be telling you both parts separately, individually, so you can have a decision of your own and a good perception on what actually happened, in the last part I will tell you the difference in both information and provide you logic and concrete evidence so you can decide on your own which version is more correct. So now let's move on the American timeline of the event. Sunday 3rd October 1993, around 1:50 p.m. in the afternoon, just after lunch, the head office task force Rangers receives a vital information that the Habergider leaders' 2 principal targets and the United Nations Corporation are located in a residence in central Mogadishu. The prime targets are set to meet in Olympic Hotel in the Bukhara market vicinity. A quick decision is made on the Operation Gothic Serpent, and around 3:32 the official force launches, consisting of 19 aircrafts, 12 vehicles and around 160 men. Objectives are simple and clear: engage, capture and evacuate. Just within 10 minutes of leaving the base, the soldiers hit the target house. 4 Ranger chalk first rope in. Within next couple of minutes, thousands of Somalis come out on the streets as they were waiting for this moment and well prepared. 3:58, one of the vehicle, a 5-ton truck, is hit and disabled by an RPG. In the next 2 minutes, groups of armed Somalis from the complete city of Mogadishu begin converging on the target areas. Well, on the other side, the raid targets are captured. Assault force reports both clan leaders and around 21 others being in the custody. As the force prepares to pull out, 3 vehicles are detached to rush to wounded Private Blackburn. Back to the base, Sergeant Dominic Pilla is killed as these vehicles return to the base. The convoy is paused and delayed, does not move out due to confusion about who is signaling whom. It turned out that Delta was waiting for the convoy to originate the signal to them, while the convoy was waiting for Delta to initiate the signal to them. Well, finally the Delta loads the prisoners in the trucks and they are ready to go. It is 4:20 that more misfortune strikes the Rangers and Delta. First helicopter, Black Hawk Super 6-1, is hit by a rocket-propelled grenade, RPG, from just around 500 meters. Super 6-1 crashed 5 blocks northeast of the target building. Delta Force snipers SSG Daniel Bush and Sergeant Jim Smith, who were providing the sniper cover to the troops down, survived the crash and began to defend the crash site now. Big blow to US operation in Somalia. The Black Hawk is down. 5 blocks was not a big deal. At 4:22, crowds of armed Somalis start racing towards the Super 6-1 crash site. It seemed everyone wanted to take credit, those who shot it down and those who did not, and even the civilians, they are jubilant. Now parallel getting back to the convoy, At 4:26, the Humvee convoy starts moving. When the prisoners are loaded, the convoy and the ground forces all begin moving towards the crashed helicopter. Black Hawk Super 6-4, piloted by Chief Warrant Officer Michael Durant, takes the place of Black Hawk 6-1, circling over the city. Just a couple of minutes later, the search and rescue team ropes in to assist the crew for the first crashed helicopter. Both pilot and co-pilot were dead. Two of the crew chiefs, Sergeant Ray Dowdy and Sergeant Charlie Warren, were severely wounded. Well, on the other side, the Humvee convoy moving back to the base were met with some roadblocks. They have to make some sharp turns. They did it swiftly, but the fire was coming direct to them. When they take few more turns, they get lost in the way, sustaining heavy casualties by the Somali snipers and armed militia. Things get rough and Somali militia's confidence is skyrocketed. 4:40, almost 20 minutes later from Super 6-1, Mike Durant's Black Hawk Super 6-4 is also hit by a RPG. This one moved towards southwest of the target building. Hostile crowds of Somalians began moving towards it as well. Just 2 minutes later, two Delta Force snipers, Sergeant First Class Randy and Master Sergeant Gary, who had been providing cover fire by air, were inserted into the crash site by helicopter at their own request to help protect injured Durant and his crew. An act of absolute bravery and valor. Around 4:54, Humvee convoy abandons Black Hawk Super 6-1 search. The lost convoy, with more than half of its force either wounded or dead, abandons its search for the first down Black Hawk and begins fighting its way back to the base. They were in no condition to help anyone. Around 5 o'clock, the QRF convoy is dispatched from the command and control in an attempt to rescue the men stranded at Durant's crash site. It encounters immediate obstacles. It was around 5:34 the QRF and the lost convoy was told to return to the base. Both convoys, having sustained heavy casualties, linked up and abandoned the efforts to break through to Durant. The remainder of the ground forces of Rangers and Commandos were converging around the first crash site, sustaining many casualties. Ranger Jamie Smith is among those shot. Around 5:40, sniper Shugat and Gordon ran out of ammunition and are killed with hostile Somalis overrunning Durant's crash site. Every member of the crew are dead except of Durant, who suffered a broken leg and an injured back. The Somalis wanted to kill Durant too, but Hashi Ali enters and says that a captured American is more worth than a dead American. Let's take him captive as they have taken ours. Around 5:45, both convoys returned to the base. 99 men remain trapped and surrounded in the city around the first down Black Hawk. Ranger Smith is bleeding heavily. Medics request immediate evacuation. But will this be possible? There is a gap and pause from the Americans of around 1 hour 30 minutes. The gap is from the high command, but there is not a second gap for the trapped Rangers. And in this 90 minutes, the trapped Rangers and Delta keep fighting thousands of Somalis, attacking them every second. Around 7:10 p.m., Black Hawk Super 6-6 makes a daring resupply run, dropping water and ammo with some medical supplies to the trapped force. It is badly damaged, cannot land to evacuate, and if would have stayed more a minute, there would be 3 Black Hawks down, not 2. 8:27 p.m. exact, Ranger Jamie Smith succumbs to his injuries. The fighting is going on. From here there was a long pause, but I will tell you first what the Americans noted. It's around 9 p.m. that the Joint Task Force Command, request assistance from other commands. The rescue convoy, composed of 2 companies of 10th Mountain Division, along with the SSG commandos of Pakistan Army. Well, here yet again, the information from our side is different, but I will give you when I speak about it. So as per Americans, it was around 11:30 the rescue convoys moves out, and as it approaches the crash site, there is a large explosion which severely damages the convoy and makes the rescue almost impossible. Many factions of the Somalians say that this explosion was actually the bombing by Americans destroying the electrical substations in Mogadishu. Electricity could not be restored to a large proportion of population in many days to come. So now at midnight the date changes to October 4th, 1993. The Rangers are still trapped inside Mogadishu without essential equipment such as any night vision devices, and they are still being attacked from every possible direction. Second half of the convoy reaches the crash site of Mike Durant's downed Black Hawk. Durant and his crew are missing. As the attacks are continuously going on and have become severe, forces are still struggling to remove the pinned body of Clifton Alvis Walcott, pilot of downed Super 6-1. Around 5:30 a.m. in the morning, Rangers start moving from the city to the Pakistani stadium on foot. Walcott's body is finally recovered. Vehicles roll out of the city. Elements of Rangers are left to run on the national street, covering the vehicles while enduring gunfire from everywhere. The road they took is now known as Mogadishu Mile. As per the American records, it took them 1 hour to reach the Pakistani stadium. This 1 mile was covered in 1 hour. 13 Americans are confirmed dead, 73 injured, 6 missing in action, 5 were later confirmed as dead, making the total to 18 KIAs, with 1 missing in action. Mike was later released by the Somali rebels to the Red Cross. Hussein Adid was instrumental in his release. After retirement, Mike started a business and then he became a politician. Mike represents the Republican Party in Alabama. So now let me take you to the course of event, the way they actually happened. Firstly, I must admit that the Rangers and Delta and even the pilots, they fought bravely for hours. Let's say the situation became terrible from around 4:30 p.m. From 4:30 p.m. till 2 a.m. is 9.5 hours. 9.5 hours. Yes, my friend, for 9.5 hours, the Rangers and Delta kept fighting thousands of Somalians. Okay, I got it. I know you would be thinking that why did I say 2 a.m. when the Americans said that the convoys from Pakistani stadium left out at 11:30 p.m. No way. That is why I told you that I will give you the actual version. We left out from Pakistani stadium at 2 a.m. The Americans have already made 2 attempts, one at 8 p.m. and the other at 11:30 p.m. to rescue the Rangers, and both the attempt failed. Let me give you details on the locations and the routes and the timing and the correct events from the last 5 hours of Operation Gothic Serpent, which was completely taken over by the Pakistan Army. The only American troops which participated in the final mission were those who were trapped and fighting the Somalis. To align with the timeline, I will take you back at 7:30 p.m. because this was the time when the Americans made their first attempt to rescue the Rangers and Delta trapped inside Bukhara market, with fresh troops and convoys coming in from the American compound. Please take a note that it was 7:30 and the Americans did not officially inform the 10th Brigade or the Pakistani army positioned in Pakistan Stadium. No such request was made for the evacuation until now. The Pakistan Stadium was not far away. It was hardly a mile. It was not that we did not know anything. We were hearing all the firing, and our spies were inside. They were giving us reports of the Super 6-1 and 6-4 being down by Yusuf Dari and his men. When both the helicopters fell, for the American ground forces, you can say it was like the end of the world. They were being fired from all sides. The Somalis became very hyper and they did not know what they had done. They started firing at them from all sides. Their positions were on all roads and roofs. They were running over them like hungry lions, those who have seen food after weeks, with just over 100 preys. It was thousands of predators. When the American High Command, who was sitting in their base watching the footage, they saw this, they did not understand what to do. As I told you, they had done this operation based on something else, and now they had fully lost control over everything. We were getting all reports in Pakistan Stadium, but formalities and scope of domain made us stand still. The Americans firstly reached out the United Nations base. Also, they reached out to the French, to the Italians, to the Germans to wipe Adid's complete militia and turn their support base into ashes. But this is not what happened. There were also 1,000+ Indian troops present there in Mogadishu United Nations base at that time. And these brave hearts were actually the first one to refuse Americans and say, why us? We don't want to die on the streets. We are here just to protect the base. Our orders are not to leave the base. Honestly speaking, in my complete tenure, I have never seen these bastards leaving the base. They were always sitting inside the base, filling their tummies and doing nothing. Why were you there, man? More than 8,000 troops with all latest weapons and might, but not having the guts to go in Bukhara market and rescue the Americans. Not for sake of a fellow soldier or even a human. This is the sad reality of preferring quantity over super quality. Well, minus the Americans themselves, all refused them plainly. And if you look at the United Nations logs, you can even see and read their official answers also. After 2 desperate rescue attempts by the Americans knew that their only hope lies with the Pakistanis positioned a mile away from the action in Pakistan Stadium. For us, as I said, that there was no formal or official request, so our day was moving as normal. We were patrolling and I was actually outside the Pakistan Stadium with my unit. The Americans approached the 10th Brigade commander for help, who said to the Americans that he wants to help but he does not want any of the troop to endanger his life. So it is on the contingent if they agree to go in and help the Americans. You can consider this as a passive refusal also, as this is the same thing what United Nations main base said. The commander of 10th Brigade said that all his equipment is available for any of the men who want to go in and help the Americans. This was around 11:50 p.m. at the night and we were patrolling outside as we were doubting that Somalis might attack the Pakistan Stadium also, when the American commanders called our commanding officer and requested immediate help. We didn't want them to lick their wounds. We didn't want them to look helpless, desperate, and then say, "Oh, mister, listen, we can't help you." If we would have said that, who would have taken the revenge of our fallen Baloch soldiers. Yusuf Dari was celebrating like Alexander the Great. Short-lived, Yusuf, short-lived will be your celebrations. But at the same time, the troops cannot be risked. When I came to know this, I called my commanding officer and told him, "Sir, this is my day. Let me go. Let the ghost unit go in. You told us last time that you will not stop us. This is our day." Permission was granted, and it was 5 of us from the ghost unit and 10 from 15 FF and 19 Lancers. A total of 15 men were supposed to go in. We were told that we have to rescue 106 Rangers and Delta trapped inside Bukhara market vicinity. We stopped by a nearby park and waited the UN vehicles and the Americans to come and meet us there. They will hand us over the vehicle, the equipment, and the carry truck in which we were supposed to bring the Americans back. Everyone refused the Americans. Even the American soldiers present in the United Nations base were reluctant to go in and rescue their own fellow soldiers. It was only Pakistan Army that agreed and went in. And the Somalis, if you read their account, you will find out them saying that if it was not Pakistan Army, they would have butchered the whole United Nations force in Mogadishu. Not just the trapped Rangers and Delta soldiers. American Army acknowledges this and have given bravery medals to all the rescue teams that was involved. And the American Army was also instrumental in giving 17 peacekeeping missions of United Nations to Pakistan Army, because they knew that the only one who will perform under pressure and when required will be Pakistan Army alone. Operation Gothic Serpent would have been a disaster if Pakistan Army was not there. We met the Americans early morning 4th October, and now we were ready to go in and rescue the Americans. It was now 8 hours plus that the Americans were holding up their position and fighting thousands of Somalis. The news was already out that the Pakistani troops are coming to rescue the Americans. Somalis were now putting roadblocks on the northern sides of Bukhara market near the Pakistan stadium. We already sent a cold message to Yusuf Dari. Time is up, my friend. Time is up. We are coming for you. We are coming. As night progressed and celebrations struck Mog, a total of 15 to 16,000 people had gathered around the Bukhara market. Even Ali Mahdi Malaysia also joined the party. They were dancing, singing, dragging the bodies on the ground. They were removing Black Hawk parts and taking pictures. They were acting like wild hogs. It was a madhouse. It was a suicidal mission to go there and evacuate so many people from there. It was impossible, but we had a score to settle and must save the Rangers and Delta. So we chalked out our plans and took 2 tanks, 1 APC and 2 personal carriers. We had reports of injured Americans. They had been fighting for almost 9 hours. Now we knew that we cannot expect anything from them. Their ammo would be finished, and more of them would be in a position of not even capable of moving. We knew we will have to do all work and make sure we are able to push back the massive human shields of Somalis. This was easier to be said than done. The 2 empty personal vehicles were taken in so Americans could be evacuated in them. We divided it in such a manner that the tanks would come from the second crash site and the APC would come from the first crash site. We started receiving the incoming fire immediately when we moved towards the crash site. My task was to track down the listed 5 people, including Yusuf Dari, and dispatch them to hell. But to reach Yusuf, We had to fight our way through thousands of his loyal soldiers. Now you can see why the United Nations force, having 15,000 plus soldiers, was avoiding this conflict and did not want to come into this fight. With having couple of Malaysian troops driving the vehicles, it was only Pakistan Armed Forces that were going in. It was impossible to access the area. The Somalis had plenty of time locking the area in such an arrangement that you can only walk in there. And you can imagine there were snipers and heavy machine gun was fired through their pickup trucks, and it was impossible to quietly sneak in. We were walking from one street to another, and we knew the area very well. We reached the first crash site, and when we reached there, we saw that few Americans were laying dead on the roads, and people were beating them, pulling them with ropes. All this footage and picture is available today. We were few meters away from the first crash site where some Americans were sieged in a building in a very bad condition. Somali forces were running around and firing at them, and it was like blind firing from all sides. I took cover from there, and our second tank, driven by Captain Imran, reached there. I said to Captain Imran, "We need to reach there, but it seems virtually impossible." And he said, "Why do you worry? Here, I will take you there." And he fired a shell into a house, and the walls of the house were broken, and the tank passed through the house, not from the roadside, but through inside the house. I followed Imran's tank to the other side of the road, and now we were almost near the crash site. I was firing and taking cover behind the tank, but I saw that there was intense fire coming on the other side where our troops were positioned. This building between them, us, and the Americans, it was a kind of a fortress where Somalis were present on the roof, on the second floor, on the first floor, and even on the ground floor. There were a minimum 300 to 400 Somali militia present in this building. So I looked at Imran and said that this building is creating a big mess. And he looked towards the building and said, "Are you talking about that building?" I said, "Yeah, bro, that one." And he said to me that, "Do you want to reach there, right?" And I said, "Oh, yes, man." I was still not finished that I heard two boom, boom, and two shells were fired towards the building base. The building collapsed, falling down, and as I told you, 300 to 400 people were inside. The whole building fell on them. And what happened to them is unknown, because not a single one of them fired us again from that direction. With this huge blow removing the main attack position of Somalis, they started retreating. This is the first time in last 12 hours that the Somalis were now running away from the crash site. And there I saw Yusuf Dari. He was on a machine gun truck and was heading towards our troops' position. I said, "Imran, I will be back," and quickly followed him as the road was blocked with concrete spread all over due to the crash building. His truck got stuck in between, and I saw that there was a distance of only 5 meters between me and him. I took out my dagger and jumped from the top of the jeep. Yusuf saw me and shot in my direction with his machine gun, but the bullets could not hit me due to close distance. I grabbed my dagger and hit Yusuf's wrist, from which he was pulling the trigger of the gun. Half of his hand remained with the gun that fell down, while half remained on his arm. He was screaming with pain, but not for much. I swiped the dagger again, and he tried to duck down. Dagger hit his face and stopped inside his mouth, cutting his ear and cheek. I quickly pulled out the dagger and kept it on his throat and said to him, "Look at me, Dari. This is for 10th Baloch," and pushed the dagger down. When the Somalis saw their main commander killed, they started screaming and running back to their cover post, and our soldiers started getting space to move further forward towards the building where the Americans were sitting. Heavy gunfire was still going on. It is very important to understand one thing here. Yusuf Dari was leading the Somalis who attacked our people of Balochistan and against whom we passed a resolution in United Nations, the resolution 837. The UN mission of Americans at that time tried a lot to stop that resolution, and to some extent they succeeded in removing Farah al-Adid's name from it as requested by Hussein Adid, although it was confirmed to us that these attacks were carried out by Farah al-Adid militia. It was pretty obvious that there was a lobby in American establishment that was supporting Farah al-Adid. These attacks were carried out by local commanders Yusuf Dari and Hashi Ali, and they were given orders from behind, and we knew who made them do this. The Americans removed Farah al-Adid's name from it. If the Americans had such a problem with Farah al-Adid, then why did they insist on removing his name? They could not stop the resolution because it was under UN umbrella. If let's say that it was not the UN uniform, the resolution would never pass. Still they removed the main culprit's name from it. When we were ordered to go there to save them, the people of their special forces, not the regular army, keep this in mind, Delta and Rangers were their special forces. We were really bitter from this behavior of American United Nations mission, and not just us, the whole UNISOM. And today we were here risking our lives to save 100 of them stuck in between enemy fire. This is only later when we found out that there is some friction going on between two lobbies within the establishment. But at that time it was pretty visible that our Baloch 10 soldiers were taken as a bait in that mission. This is the high morals and high character of Pakistan Armed Forces, that when a soldier of allies is stuck in between crossfire and the ally will request us to save him, we will go in. We went in Mogadishu. We went in Tora Bora. As I told you before that we had 2 tanks in the rescue convoy and 1 APC. The first crash site was hardly a mile away from us. When we left from there, the Somalis were prepared. They knew that the Pakistanis will come from here, so they put a lot of roadblocks in our way. When we passed them, as I told you, we shot shells at them from the tanks. When we reached the first crash site from inside the house, we saw 6 to 7 buildings full of Somali militia and took down 1 building. But still, 5 to 6,000 troops were there on the streets. If you look at it from the Americans' perspective, they say that more than 200 of them, some say 180, some say 200, so let's say 200. Rangers and Delta had reached inside Bukhara market. Almost 100 of them were now trapped in 2 locations in a siege-like situation. When we reached the first crash site, we saw there were Americans in 2 buildings in front of us. There were around 25 in one and 60 to 70 in other. We gave them a signal. We told them we are Pakistani troops and we are here to pick them up. But there was intense fire coming from the building, so they could not come out, and also many of them were badly injured. So it was us to go inside, pick each one of them, bring him outside and put him in the APC or the tank and then move back. All our vehicles, including the personal carriers, have arrived to the site. Also, the APC was pushed ahead towards the building to provide cover, but the Americans could not come out still because heavy fire was going on. Eventually, I told my unit to provide me cover, and I somehow managed to reach inside one of the buildings. When I reached inside, I saw that the Americans were sitting there as they have seen at that angel. They were not ready to come out. They were absolutely devastated by bullet injuries, and They were tired to even get up. They were just sitting there in such a state that they were waiting for death. There I lifted a man. People were calling him Richard. Richie. I told him to get up and I told him I will take him to safety. But he kept looking at me, being stunned. He just couldn't believe that help has arrived. I shook him strongly and said, "Hey, Richard, if you want to live, come on, get up quickly. We need to move out." And I lifted him on my shoulder. And then there was a guy named John, I think their medic. He was in a state of shock. The Somalis did not have stun grenades, but I don't know, somehow he was traumatized from this long, painful, and tiring episode. I convinced him for almost 5 minutes that we need to move out. The Somalis were gathering and closing down on our troops standing outside, and they were fighting them, pushing them back, and messaging us to come out quickly. Those who were injured were saying, "No, we will not go out because we will not be able to make up to the vehicles and they will kill us." I was like, "Why are you so panicked? We are with you. We will take you there." But they wanted the choppers to come and airlift them. They kept saying that even we will be able to take them to the transport vehicle. How will we reach the Pakistan stadium? Because the Somalis are everywhere. They wanted air support. So we called upon the American base. But unfortunately, the American commanders did not want to risk more helicopters to be shot down. So they refused. I think that was the right calculation because the Somali militias were in very good positions, holed up in the building, and they could easily shoot down any helicopter coming down to airlift these guys. There was no option. We had to go by the road. We had to cross all the barricades again. We had to fight again. We had to fight again with thousands of Somali militia waiting for us to come back on the road. I still remember that night in Mogadishu, the night where survival hung on the sharpest of edges. The world may call it the Mogadishu Mile, but for me, it was a mile paved with blood, fire, and brotherhood that crossed every flag and every uniform. 2 American Black Hawks were shot down deep inside the city. This was not a small thing, and the situation was unraveling fast. Orders came down on us that we have to go in under the umbrella of United Nations to save the American Rangers and Delta Force operators who were pinned down, taking casualties and running out of ammunition. There was no time for politics, no time for hesitation. Soldiers were trapped and we had to get them out. While taking them to safety on Mogadishu Mile, I climbed out of the armored personal vehicle with my rifle around my chest and my heart pounding against my ribs. As we rolled towards the Pakistan Stadium, the light of burning vehicles and buildings lit up the skyline like a vision of hell. Every street was Gotland, militia fighters in every alley, every window, firing RPGs and Kalashnikovs at anything that dared to move. Our convoy was pushed forward under relentless fire. Our tanks led the way, hammering the militia with cannon fire, while our infantry dismounted and cleared the roadblocks with cold precision. At every turn, we met resistance. At every turn, we broke through. Finally, after what felt like an endless crawl through death, we reached the Pakistan Stadium. What we found shook even seasoned veterans among us. These men, bloodied, exhausted, covered in dust and smoke, had fought through the night without rest. Many of them were wounded, some barely able to stand, but their eyes burned with the raw fire of survival. Yet we couldn't get all the vehicles close enough to pick them up. We had to carry them on our shoulders to bring them to safety, to bring them to the armored vehicles, to bring them to the personal carriers. But we had limited resources. Once we inserted the Americans in the vehicles, there was no place for us to stay in. We had to walk and jog our way against the vehicles, protecting them from fire and firing back to the Somalian militia. Imagine it was like 8,000 fighting men and women having 10 to 15 targets, all closed, all wrapped up around the vehicles, while we had no one to shoot. Where could we shoot? How many people? How many windows? How many roofs? Where to shoot back? Mogadishu Mile is the longest mile anyone would have ever traveled. We kept sprinting through the narrow, hostile streets, carrying the wounded, dragging one another forward. I still hear the sound of the crack of AK-47s, the screech of RPGs flying overhead, the shouted orders and the screams of the wounded. We Pakistani soldiers move alongside them, laying down the suppressing fire, our tanks blocking the alleys, our guns answering every burst from the Somali militia. I led a small team forward, running parallel to the Americans, picking off shooters from the rooftops and windows, clearing paths where the enemy tried to cut them off. The streets were a nightmare. Fire rained from every side. I saw one ranger stumble and fall, shot through the leg. Before he could be finished off, one of our boys grabbed him and pulled him behind the armor of Pakistani APC. I remember locking eyes with that American soldier. A silent understanding passed between us. No flags, no nations, just men trying to survive. Step by brutal step, yard by bleeding yard, we fought our way down National Street. We shielded the Americans as they made their final push to safety. The Mogadishu Mile was not some heroic charge. It was raw, naked survival, fueled by pain and sheer will. At last, the surviving soldiers reached the safety of Pakistan Stadium, where we pulled them aboard like brothers, not strangers. We did not ask for thanks. We did not expect glory. We just went in to save lives, even it meant giving our own lives in return. We were soldiers doing what soldiers must. When it was all over and we finally rolled back to the United Nations base, I looked back at the smoking ruins of the city and thought, this is what it means to never leave a man behind. Years later, in the frozen mountains of Kargil, they would call me the ghost. But the ghost was born that night in Mogadishu, among the fire, the gunfire, and the desperate, unbreakable spirit of men who refused to fall. It is not bitterness that compels this account, but a desire for truth. To sideline or erase the contributions of the Pakistani forces in Mogadishu and attribute the entire rescue to American heroism alone is not just an oversight, it is an injustice. The world must remember that when American forces were bleeding and surrounded in Mogadishu, it was the Pakistani troops under the UN banner who pushed forward under fire without hesitation. This was not the first time Pakistan's military has stood between chaos and order. From the bloodied streets of Mogadishu to the rugged peaks of Tora Bora to the crucible of Cold War in Afghanistan, the Pakistani army has answered the calls everywhere, every time, not for credit, not for glory, but because that is what professional, disciplined, and battle hardened forces do. Across the globe from Africa to Balkans, the Pakistani military has been of the largest and most reliable contributors to United Nations peacekeeping missions, often deployed in the most volatile regions, bringing not just strength but stability. Their silent contributions to the defense of Arab nations, support in internal law enforcement, and cooperation in international crises all point to one undeniable truth. The Pakistani army is not just a regional force, it's a global stabilizer. The Pakistan Army's record speaks for itself. They have always been first to arrive and the last one to leave. They have defended not only their borders, but the very idea of peace in a fractured world. They have stood shoulder to shoulder with allied nations, lent strength to brothers, restored order amid collapse, and patrolled the world's most dangerous fault lines quietly, honorably, without asking for recognition. They are not mercenaries of convenience. They are guardians of peace, professionals forged in conflict, guided by discipline, and trusted across continents. It's time the world stopped treating their sacrifice as a footnote in someone else's story. Recognition is not a favor, it is justice. Naveed Ali Sheikh, signing off. Author, Black Hawk Down, The Truth Behind the Fog. I hope you enjoyed the book. This book is dedicated to the brave soldiers of Pakistani Armed Forces who charged into the heart of Mogadishu with unwavering resolve, risking everything, not for praise but for duty, to the men who stood tall in the line of fire, who rescued the forgotten and walked back through smoke, blood and silence, and most of all to the ghosts of Mogadishu, those who survived the battle, faded from headlines, and were left unmentioned in the stories the world chose to tell. You were never ghosts to us. You were the backbone of honor in a war that history tried to forget. History may have left your name unwritten, but your courage is etched in every soul who knows the truth. This is your voice. This is your reckoning. This is for your war, finally remembered.